the Kittitas County Public Hospital District Number 1 Board of Commissioners meeting to order. Before we get started, I mean, everybody in this room knows we lost Dr. Frank Smith since our last meeting, and I know I speak for everybody when we say that he was a beloved member of the community and of the KDH family, and we're really going to miss him. So there's an event for January 31st, 4 to 8 at Garden Fitness. If people want to come and pay their respects and talk and reminisce, so everybody's invited. Hope to see you there. It'll be a good time. He was a great guy. Okay. Approval of the agenda. Anything to add to the agenda or change? Okay. Do I have a motion then?
Second.
A motion from Erica, second from Roy. No discussion, then all those in favor say aye. Aye. Unanimous?
Aye.
Unanimous from all four of us. All right. Bob should be here shortly. Consent agenda, minutes of from the last board meeting, the December meeting, which was held January 3rd, approval of checks, foundation report, and the minutes from the Finance Committee. Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Or any changes to the minutes from the last meeting? Okay. Hearing none, then do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Okay.
Second.
Motion from Erica, second from Roy. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as submitted, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, that's 4. Thank you. Okay.
Matt?
Yes.
I just want you to know I'm in the room, I have my phone on, and I can hear everything as long as people use their mics.
Lean it in now, Liana.
Can you?
Sorry?
I'm leaning in now so you can hear me.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me when I talk like this?
I can hear you easily. It's mostly Erica and people like Rhonda sitting on the floor and Dr. O'Brien. As long as they have mics on.
I knew you were going to pick on me.
We're in good company.
We asked Rhonda not to come because we knew that it would annoy you.
We went so far as to send her to Hawaii.
All right, we'll try to be loud. Okay, so we have a presentation tonight from the CFO, Scott Olander. You sent out some budget information to us ahead of time, which we appreciate. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Just before we get started, I would just like to acknowledge all of the work that went into this budget. This is, I would say this is probably one of the most thorough budgeting processes I've been a part of. There was literally, Jason was able to pull up all of the FTEs that we have, all the employee names and departments, and with the managers, and then line item, we went employee by employee, expense item by expense item, and revenue item by revenue item. So I just want to acknowledge all of the work of Jason and Julie and Libby and myself and all of the managers. And it was a very, very thorough process. And I think the budget that we have in front of you is a pretty darn good budget. And we'll dig into it a little bit more. You may have some questions, but there was an awful lot of work that went into this, and I think it was very, very good work and a very solid budget.
Great.
So, the areas of focus continue to be one of our strategic goals is access to care, and so this budget continues to expand access to care and also support other elements of the strategic plan. We're intending to optimize the use of the Cerner system that we've implemented, and we're going to be looking to control costs. And then collaborate with other organizations on the new reimbursement models as they come. And that's that last point is a little fuzzy, but it's we didn't budget any revenue for it, but we did budget the known expenses related to it. The budget was based on 9 months of actual, and in some instances we made some tweaks to it that didn't seem to be right if there had been increases later in the year, but it's basically looking at 9 months of actual data and then reviewing where we were through the months of November. And then new service lines that we have been talking about are not factored into this budget, which specifically swing bed, pulmonary rehab, and we're assuming that there's no change to our payer mix. And then we have increased charges the 1st of January by an average of 3%. These are the elements, the key elements of wages, non-contract employees.
Excuse me, Scott, just one quick question. The increase in the 3% increase, is that I know that's average across the board, but what sets that rate change? How do we determine how much the increase is going to be? So it's just...
That rate, I think, has been, last year we went out to look at consumer price index average increases in healthcare. I think last year it was about 1.9. And going out to the same sources last year, we were seeing that it was about a 2.9 to 3% increase, and so that's the rate that we went with. There are, where we had some significant market shortfalls, we made some other adjustments to relate to that, but on average, these are the increases that the budget assumes.
So it's to keep up with the general trends across healthcare, and also I imagine we've probably done a pretty good job to this point, but if we lag behind in some areas, we jack it up a little more. If we're close already to what the standard is, we might not do anything there. Is that the idea?
Correct.
One of the things that the financial sustainability group has been discussing is we know we want to benchmark expenses, and we're well along the way of doing that. But we're also going to be looking for a database to benchmark our costs so that we can look at care hospitals and see how we compare in the market.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Any other questions about this particular slide? It's fairly... These were just a few of some of the key stats. There's obviously many more. You can't see them very well, and I do have a paper handout with some of these stats that we can pass out to you also. And the stats that we have actually drive the revenue that we have. And so we've had statistical increases in diagnostic imaging or lab or some clinic visits. There's a corresponding revenue increase or decrease.
So there are, with emergency visits, that's pretty stable. Same with deliveries, surgery procedures, pretty stable. Rehab visits seem to be growing, and so we sort of kept up with that growth. Same thing with radiology, I guess. All those pretty stable. Then lab tests seem to be growing. The one that kind of sticks out, obviously, is the top one, the provider clinic visits,
Yes.
which is a fairly big, dramatic increase. Can you explain that?
I can, but I think we got something a little bit later that we can show.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
That I think explains it
Sounds
a little
good.
bit better. But
That's fine with me. Thanks.
some of it's growth, some of it's acquisition of the pediatric practice is a big chunk of it.
Okay, good. Thanks.
This is the year-to-year comparison of the actual results for 2016, 17, and 18 with the 2019 budget. And then in a document that I sent you earlier has a more detailed P&L with it. And we'll dig into even a little more detail than this. we're assuming that for routine capital, we're only going to spend about $1.6 million. So that's just replacement of equipment and things like that. There may be some other large capital projects that will be brought to you for separate approval. But they would, for as far as expenses are concerned, they would most likely not impact the P&L because they would be placed in service in 2019.
The thinking is we'll be well occupied with the build out at MAC, and that'll be the focus of most of our acquisition.
This is, this is a little hard to read, so on the screen, but let me, this.
Wait, so the build out at MAC, is that considered part of the routine
No.
expenditures? That would be separate.
Right.
Roy has seen this, but this is going to be hard to see just for the screen, but this is,
Matt,
Yeah.
could you ask Scott to put the mic in front of him? I can barely hear him.
I'm
Scott,
sorry.
will you put your mic in front of please?
Thank you, thank you.
I think
Yeah,
the
you're
problem
welcome.
is I'm not speaking loud enough, Liana. But I
Yeah,
will.
just put that mic, baby, right in your face. Thank you.
It's there.
Come on, you make Dr.
Got it.
O'Brien sound like an elephant.
And into it. Still hard to hear.
This slide here shows, documents the growth or decreases that we've had in FTEs over the year. As you look at our overall FTEs, our FTEs have increased. And Jason put this document together, and what this shows is we have increased FTEs, but it shows where we have increased them. And as you see at the end of 2016, between 2016 and 17, we added a little over 10 FTEs. Most of those FTEs were in the clinic, and our goal is to create access, and we've done that. And between 17 and 18, we had some changes. We did a contract service with Rehab Visions, and so we decreased about 12 FTEs for therapists, but we also had some adds, but the net was a net decrease of 6.7. But again, most of the increase was 17 additional staff, providers and staff in our clinics. And then from 18 to 19, again, it's about 2 FTEs at the hospital and an increase in the clinics of 9.1. And then this bottom chart shows the overall increase. So we've actually decreased FTEs in the hospital since 2016, added an additional 36 FTEs in our clinics. We've added 4 FTEs in home health and one in urgent care. So the growth in expense, and there's corresponding growth, expense increase also, but most of the growth that this slide demonstrates has been to increase access. Questions? And this next slide that shows, this is attempting to show what the growth in revenue related to the new business lines that we've added. So this top slide is, it shows that with pediatrics, our overall revenue growth is growing $1.6 million. Internal med, with the addition of a provider, $356K. Surgical / wound, $142K, and then workplace health, about $59. And then we've also had some other growth in other operating revenue, also with retail pharmacy. And then the what we call a same store / prior year. That's when we wanted to break out and say, if we hadn't done anything, what would the change of revenue have looked like? And this shows that we've increased overall revenue by about $9.2 million. Of that 9.2, $3.8 million is related to the charge master increase that we implemented. We made a conscious decision to increase the number. There's an expense increase in MRI, but there's also a revenue increase with MRI. We added capacity with MRI. And then clinic volume, you see the impact of existing clinic providers as they become more efficient. And then lab, rehab visions is increasing capacity, echo and urgent care. And then a decrease in CT, and that is due to some of the concerns with radiation impact. So there's, we have a new CT that uses lower radiation, but also the ER providers, which are the main orders of CT, are ordering less scans.
Can you hit the next slide?
Artful. I'm sorry. Thank you. Questions? Okay. Go to the next one.
So, a couple quick questions. Maybe I was going to wait. Maybe you're going to cover this. If revenue charges, I mean, some of those pediatrics is like up 20%, internal medicine 8%, outpatient 5% increase, and workplace health like a 14%. So did you just project out that we have capacity for this?
Pediatrics, the prior year was a partial year.
Okay.
So we acquired them in August, was it August?
September.
Or September.
So if you're saying there's a general 3% increase based on inflation, consumer price index, is that where you're kind of getting the base?
The 3% on this next one, the 3% that we identify on this slide, that $3.8 million, that's the impact of the increase to our charge master. If we were charging $100 for a X-ray test, we are now charging $103. That's that 3% increase.
Okay.
And that's the impact of that 3%.
And so who sets that 3%?
It was set. We have contracts with our care contracts that actually limit the amount that we can increase on an annual basis. Mm-hmm. And so we have a limit on some of our contracts that if we increase it greater than 3%, then we have to increase the discount that is offered. Yeah. So that's why we went with the 3%.
Yeah. So, because I mean, traditionally, healthcare has really outpaced inflation by quite a bit. So if you're basing on inflation, and with some reimbursements, insurance traditionally just reduces reimbursement. So it's hard to really, in my mind. So how is it a 3% growth, other than saying we have a 3% increase based on what CMS is paying or Blue Cross is paying? Is that?
Well, and CMS is not increasing rates by 3%, but as a critical access hospital, we are reimbursed based on a ratio of cost to charges by both Medicare and Medicaid.
Got it. So we're allowed to do that?
Yes.
Got it.
Yes, okay. And then our care contracts allow us, they pay at either 80% or 85% or some number like that. And so if we increase charges by, you don't get the full 3%, but you get a part of it.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Thanks for clarifying that. I thought it was like tied to inflation or CPI or something like that. But this is what we're contractually allowed to do.
Jason, anything you can add?
No, we've also considered, like last year we increased the rates by 5%, so we're considering other things. So general healthcare inflation is probably even higher than 5%. Yeah. But what that does is just increases our contractual difference. So you'll see that our contractuals are about 47% write-off, and it's just going to increase that because our Blue Cross will come back and say, you're only allowed a 3% cap, so now instead of us paying you 85% charge, we're going to pay you 3% charge. So doing 3% keeps us within that window where we'll keep our 85% reimbursement. And then Medicare and Medicaid is 60% of the business. It doesn't pay us based on charge anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
This next slide, we had, you'll see as we get into expenses that we're relatively flat with materials and supply expenses, and this And the reason for it is we joined this Intelair purchasing buyer group, and then also, and Morgan Anderson, our materials management director, has been able to negotiate price decreases also. So joining this group has been, there's been some cost to join that group, and also it's been financially beneficial. The second biggest item on our P&L is supply expenses outside of labor. So this is the big expense to look at. And then the next item, or the chart down here, is looks at our purchase services, and shows some of the changes that have happened in purchase services, as particularly with revenue cycle. You'll hear when we talk about our month of December that purchase services has been a problem for us. It's been a cost that is related to implementation of certain and optimizing it and getting that and going. But we're reducing some of the purchase service labor that we have by a substantial amount. And in other areas that we're making conscious decisions to increase the purchase service related to in the quality line, we're joining the Caravan ACO, and the cost for joining that is $226,000, a little over $18,000 a month. And then we're working with MDIG as a to do our radiology as in-house radiologists, and so that costs us about $200,000. But you can see we've drilled into purchase services, which was an area of the burners last year in 2018. And this is a continuation of the purchase services. You can see the change with rehab visions, or this is actually showing from 17 to 19 to see the changes related to that, because there was a significant increase in purchase services from 17 to 19, and then it shows you where those increases were.
And that wouldn't include like locum tenens.
Yeah.
So
it would not. It would be under professional fee.
Yeah.
And the reason we kept looking between 17 and 18 is because there was so much in the cost structure related to OneSource, and we wanted to make sure that we were really starting from a pure operational perspective. So we looked at both of those.
Questions that you have?
So, sorry.
No, please.
Some of those have counter reimbursement, like MRI and rehab visions. So there's some offsets. Some are just you're buying quality, you're buying a revenue cycle to help process things a little bit better.
So I think it's fair to say in each of those purchase services, there's revenue or additional reimbursement
Something tied to
attached
it.
to them. So when we look at things like, let me see, the purchase service and administration, the revenue cycle, we're actually anticipating that we're going to add software that helps us maximize our coding, so that there will be a return on investment in that. With regard to Caravan ACO, part of that we may be able to reclaim through the Greater Columbia ACH as part of our patient-centered medical home model. But more importantly, there is an enhanced revenue piece of that, and this system will allow us to report all the myths, and in real time, or more real time, allow us to look at how we're doing by provider and closing the care gap that helps achieve myths. So there is real enhanced reimbursement at the end of that. MDIG, we did not have a fee associated with Yakima Valley Radiology. They came here, they read and billed for their own films. We took the facility component, they took the professional component, but they were here for 2 or 3 hours a day most of the time. MDIG has a full-time radiologist that will be here, and we also anticipate we'll have additional interventional radiology. So not only will quality be enhanced, but I think we will see an increase in business, and they have programs to help us market our exception to that is our maintenance contracts. We've added a lot of new diagnostic imaging and lab equipment. It was on warranty for the first year, so 2019 will be the first full year when we see charges for repairs and maintenance contracts. We do think that repairs and maintenance contracts is the place for us to focus in 19. That there's a more consolidated way to go about that. Did I lie at all?
On the ACO, is that cost based on size?
I don't.
It's a per member per month.
It is a PMP, it's per member per month.
Okay.
But I think it's fixed, it's a fixed
It's
amount.
fixed per member per month. Well, they calculate it based on probably our initial enrollment per member per month.
So we are budgeting about a 2.44% positive operating margin of so a little over $2 million, and I think the total net after non-operating revenue expenses are factored in about $2.6 million.
Any questions?
Thank you for walking us through that.
Thank you.
Thank you for walking us through that. I appreciate it.
And we will be asking for formal approval of the budget and the finance.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda, it's time for public comment and announcements. If anybody here would like to make a public comment, please keep your comments to about 3 minutes, and please state your name and address at the beginning. Is there anybody here who would like to make a public comment or announcement?
I'm looking at Libby. No.
Please state your name if you have a comment to make.
I do know.
Okay, thank you. All right, on to reports and dashboards. First up, quality. Mandy Olson.
I'm sorry it's a little short this month, and I don't have really anything to add.
I would just say we all sort of struggled with the report since it was about 2 weeks
Yes.
between having to give Mandy our report and this meeting.
That's yeah.
Any questions for Mandy about the report or the dashboard?
I didn't see this in the board packet. It's possible I might have missed it, but have we talked about measles at all? What our plan is if measles comes to test County?
We actually did have a case of concern for measles that was negative.
Okay.
But we're working closely with the emergency department, our house supervisors, the clinics, public health department. So there was a lot of coordination that went on with that particular case that was thankfully negative. But they're going to do a review too of how we handled this one to make sure that we're ready.
Is the policy generally to not have patients come directly into the waiting area at the lobby? If
We don't always know.
They might just pop in.
Which is what happened in this case. The patient shows up to the emergency room to be treated.
Sure.
So it takes a lot of coordination with the health department, because if that does happen and we don't know that the patient has needles, there's a lot of work that has to be done with exposed community members and our employees. So we were prepared for that if that had happened, but thankfully it didn't. But we're preparing for that it might be, since it is in Seattle now, I've heard also.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments for Mandy about her report or the dashboard? Okay, thank you, Mandy. Next up is the CEO report.
I don't have a lot to add. I would just mention that in the MAC project, you should have seen pictures of the new signs that went up this week, yesterday, and today.
Do I have the old picture? I apologize, I thought they were mine.
We also are beginning to develop the cost estimates, and these are very preliminary in their construction estimates. But like the third floor, the big project is looking like it's going to run about $200 a square foot, the construction piece. The removal of the existing elevator is about $46,000. Let's see what else. They're continuing to work on the second and third floor suites. The bids beginning to come together. As it gets more complete, we will come up with a way to keep the board up to date on tenant improvements and build out, so looking up in terms of costs, and come up with a way to balance sort of detail and estimates for the board to use as we move forward. But at this point, I checked with Scott and Libby today, and I'm well within the amount of funding that we borrowed back in 2017.
So, and that elevator, is that, can be used,
I don't know, is it's going to be scrapped? I had that question too, and I don't know if there's a components we can sell.
yeah.
Get some, I don't know.
Get someone to take it and use it. They're spendy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be taken out.
Any questions for me? I did leave at your place an environmental scan, and I think we've had these presented before by people. I just find there's nothing actionable in it, but it does just look at some of the statistics in the inventory and some projections, and I just always find it really interesting. So I asked Andy to get some additional copies for you. So if you're talking to a group about uninsured or healthcare inflation or labor market shortages, this environment scan can be really handy for that place.
And it says in your report that you participated in U.S. Chapel in the Foundations Retreat.
We did.
How'd that go?
I thought it was, and Roy was there as well. We talked, one of the proposals that we made to the foundation or asked them to consider was that they participate in programs with us. And one example that we gave them was the MA apprentice program, sponsoring a student kind of thing. They've traditionally purchased capital equipment, so which is great. We'll take money in whichever hand they want to put it in. But there are opportunities for them to participate in very visible ways, like the MA apprenticeship program. We talked to them about like a patient navigator, guided patient services program, things that we like to do, but that we can't fund. So they took that away and are doing some long-term planning now, so they have meetings next week. Very good.
Any questions for Julie about her report? Okay, thank you. Next up is the 2018 KBH Business Plan fourth quarter report. All right.
All right. Okay, I think I'm up first.
Start with access.
So in looking at access, I have, well, in looking at all of our business plans, you'll have the calendar of events and items that we have completed would be in green, and any items that we've added or changed, we've, all the plans have marked them in red. And then we have our detailed report. So I didn't know if you wanted me to read through that or if you had questions.
And just to remind board members, we're going to talk about the strategic plan and refreshing it later in the meeting. But this is about the specific report on 2018. People have had a chance maybe to review this. Is there anything that you'd like to ask Carrie specifically about what she has here, about what she's added, or what you've added, completed, stuff in the report? Any specific?
So under strategy number 1, we have a new name for the provider compensation unit, right?
We do. It's called the Provider Value Alignment Committee. Okay, so I'll make that change. More to the point, we had a committee.
Right.
Yes, 50 a year. Okay.
Any comments or questions regarding the taxes?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the detailed report.
Next up would be community engagement, and I really don't have any, along with Carrie, she's talked about how it's in there. We did call out on the last page of our written some of the proposed changes to deliverables. Other than that, I'd be happy, we would all be happy to take any questions.
Any questions about the community engagement piece of it? Thank you.
Can I talk about the accreditation proposal that's in here? It's the last item under changes.
Sure.
And there are really two accrediting bodies that we could go to, the Joint Commission or D&B. And what the update is to not necessarily jump in and hire someone to accredit us, but evaluate what we think the benefit of doing that would be. And from my perspective, I think when we look for clinical partners in larger systems, it would be nice to be able to lead with that, since critical access hospitals are exempt from a lot of reporting and quality indicators that PPS hospitals typically rely on. So we think that would really make us an attractive partner. But in addition to that, it's a quality indicator, a quality measure that we control, as opposed to someone else deciding what to measure on, and finding ourselves published or not published, getting 3 stars or 5 stars. This is something that's laid out that we can deliberately improve and work towards. So that's kind of why we decided to do
What's it? It's accredited through.
D&D is one company, and the other is the Joint Commission, which is not familiar.
And Rhonda and I had a conversation about what D&B stood for. She sent me the information on it in Norwegian.
Yeah,
Based.
or Dutch. Is it Norwegian?
I thought it was Dutch too.
Oh,
Yeah.
But
maybe it was Dutch. But I imagine
But
it was
the N is like Nords, so it makes you think it's
vowels with little O's over them and such.
Yeah.
Lots of
Not
Nords
very
something,
fun.
Veritas. I think it came from a shipping company though, is the background in it. It's shipping.
For the first
And all
time,
industries now.
I think JCHO is getting some competition, and D&D is that competition, particularly for smaller organizations. And my experience with Joint Commission has always been they're very facilities heavy. And the first year they walk away, you have $3 million in building projects, and not a lot of sense that that's really going to improve quality. And D&B, from what I understand, is much more process focused. So that's why.
Rhonda had indicated that the Joint Commission accreditation has a more punitive stance to it versus
And
innovative.
gotcha.
And, yeah.
We have the state together.
Well covered there.
Is there hospitals our size that are?
So Samaritan is D&D accredited. I think Mason is
Pullman is
Morton,
also.
Pullman. So there's a number that have done that. Who is Monroe?
So this is going to help us to understand better what we're doing and what we're doing well, and it will also help us to explain that to other people.
And my thought is that it falls under the transparency part of the community engagement.
Okay. Is there going to come a time when you need some sort of approval to move forward with that? Or is it just...
Other than this, there'll be a cost associated with it and a lot of effort.
Yeah. Do you know what time frame approximately?
As we move into, once I think, I have an opportunity to hear the discussion about the strategic plan tonight and how we might change that. I mean, I guess I consider this a proposal from leadership and that the board would need to accept that and tell us to go forward and study it. But my hope is over the rest of January and February, senior leadership and myself will work on a more strategic way to present what we're working on with regard to the plan. And I think I've explained that the current format feels kind of project-driven to me as opposed to sort of a broader strategic report out. So we'll work on the plan and how to identify milestones that we've achieved and projects that we've completed in a way that puts it in the context of the entire strategic plan.
Any additional questions or comments regarding community engagement? Okay, thank you. Next up, partnerships and collaborations.
Yes, and we do have our report in the same format with our proposed changes at the end of the third page or page 32.
Maybe the same format, but I would say that it stands out.
Oh, right. I'm so surprised you think that, Matt. Yes, and then our timeline is just slightly different. We didn't get the memo on the red, so ours, the changes are italicized on ours.
We'll have everyone else italicized there. Okay. Any comments or questions regarding partnerships and collaboration report?
Just a question about the life flight and New Words.
Mm-hmm.
Did we have a identified transport team prior, or was it?
Oh, yes, we did, but this was just a specific training we had.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was a shift to life flight for newborns.
No, the flight, staff from the flight airlift, Northwest Cape.
Okay.
It was about helicopter safety and transport. Is that what she was
So
I think she's asking if we switched in particular to
Is
life
it-
flight.
Okay, so there's not a partnership shift or anything like that?
No.
So I don't know if everybody's noticed this, but at the end, they have suggested changes for upcoming. Talk about something. Any questions or comments regarding? Thank you. Okay, next up, financial sustainability.
We worked with Roy and Rihanna on ours, and ours was being updated as of yesterday, so there's it continues to be a work in progress, but part of the top is to maintain a positive operating bottom line. I think we're hopefully we can do that in 2019 budget. We can do more. There's other work that's going to be done also with mentioned indicators and metrics to measure progress. And I think once this, we have an approved budget, then we're going to work on a long-range forecast. Do some modeling assumptions.
So just as a kind of heads up, I think one of the things that the board had thought about doing at one point, maybe in March, was having a half-day retreat or a special meeting where we kind of talk about financial sustainability and especially some of the challenges that we're facing in the coming months. And we're sort of deciding whether we need such a meeting, such a retreat, or whether we can sort of handle it. This issue may come up when we talk about the 2019 budget and things like that. But when we talk about that, it might be good to get your sort of thoughts on this. Whether this is something you think that requires a kind of special meeting and a retreat, so we can address maybe some of the challenges that we have coming up, or whether you think it's something that we can kind of handle in this setting. and the board members will have input on that too, but I just wanted to kind of. Any questions about financial sustainability?
Matt?
Yeah.
Leona here. Scott, I didn't get the documents you were going to send me as of yesterday or Tuesday. Would you check with Libby, because down here in Arizona, I don't use my KDH email. I use a different email, so you may have sent it to that. But could you check with her and be sure I get those?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Any questions for Scott about the report?
I just wanted to say that was a very good report. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Any last questions for Julie, the CEO report, or anything about the fourth quarter report for business?
I really like the format of this round robin, everybody updating on what they're doing, and I think it's pretty efficient. So thank you guys for all of your italicizing and reddening of texts and such.
Yeah, we realize that you can sort of, it's only a few pages, but we realize a lot of work goes into creating that, a lot of work behind the scenes to carry out all this stuff that you've been doing. So appreciate that. Anything else? Okay. Thank you. And everybody. Let's move on then. Medical staff, chief of staff, Dr. O'Brien.
Hi, can you hear me, Liana?
Yeah, I can. Thank you, Dr. O'Brien.
Okay, it's right by my mouth. Anyway, yes, as you noticed on the amended agenda, it's in dark that the appointment and reappointment was redone. And actually, I'm going to ask to redo it some more at this time, because I've come across probably an incorrect way of our allocating status to local attendance people, and especially hospitalists. And we've been giving them active status. Excuse me. And I believe they should be associate status, because this is not their primary place of practice. And so what I want to do, we've already removed one, and that was the amended list you got. And I want to remove two more from this list that you have, and that is Matthew Kastner and Gregory Engel. Remove those from being approved tonight. And Julie and I will give them temporary privileges and resubmit those three to the MEC to reconsider their status. And I believe it should be changed from active to associate, in which cases they can have the same privileges, but there's less requirements, such as to live in the county and have certain numbers of contacts, etc. Anyway, so remove Kastner and Engel from the list that you have now.
Which one is the third one? You said
Shannon
oh, thank you.
was on this list. It was removed. So then, beginning at the top, Douglas Dixon is a former medical graduate from North Carolina that's joining us in February at KVIM, KB Family Medicine. Has all good references. When Roy reviewed it, some of those weren't in the packet, but they are now. And it's all good. Laura Hotchkiss, provisional associate under direct radiology, new appointment. So those are the two new appointments. And of course, those are for 1 year provisional. Oz Alawi is a telestroke provider with Virginia Mason, and Yapundish is also a telestroke provider, as you can see. if there's any issues with any of these people, I would bring it up, but there are none. Hannah Bay is with direct radiology. Anne Marie Baudu is with direct radiology. William Phillips is with direct radiology. Then now our active is Bruce Herman, a reappointment in Women's Health. And Sarah Henniges is a allied health professional at Cle Elum. Julia Reel, allied health professional at Family Medicine, Ellensburg. And Emily Toretta is a nurse practitioner and allied health professional at Women's Health, KDH. Now, there's one other separately listed, and that is Dr. Vaughn. As we reviewed his application for renewal of active privileges, excuse me, we found that his numbers of contacts were inadequate to maintain. So our precedent under these circumstances is to, instead of renew active, is to offer them the option of either choosing ambulatory or provisional active into a 1-year renewal in order to keep track of their number of contacts and to see if they then reach a number adequate to maintain active status. Is that clear? Any questions?
Okay,
So did you hear back from?
Yes.
Dr. Vaughn?
Yes. And that's why it's listed as provisional active. That's what he chose.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Can I just make one correction that Dr. Dixon will be at internal medicine, not at family.
Oh.
So you were correct.
I thought he was going
Yeah.
to enroll,
You're right.
but it's listed as.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Any questions or discussion? So what we would do is approve the MEC recommendations for appointment and reappointment with this list amended to remove Kastner and Engel. Yeah, Shannon's not on my list. You got a special list.
He had it. Well, he had earlier edition.
Ed Shannon.
Yeah, I'll make a motion, we move to accept the MEC's recommendation of appointments and.
Okay.
Second.
Motion from Bob Davis, second from Leon Armstrong. Any additional questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, unanimous, thank you.
We can hear you good.
Okay, thanks, Dr. O'Brien.
Thank you.
CMO report, Dr. Martin's not here. Everybody's had a chance, hopefully, to look at his report. Any questions about anything on his report? Julie may be able to answer some questions, but any, or at least Father maybe. Any questions?
Yeah, the OBGYN applicants who've accepted offers, how soon do we expect them to start?
You know, there's been a change status on at least one of those, and I'm not sure. One was due to start in April, one was due to start later in the year, and that may have changed. So when we get more perfect information, we can share that.
So with Dr. Martin not here, let's try to grill Lisa. Anybody, any questions about any of this stuff? Any questions about any of this stuff? Twin bed unit, pulmonary, rehab program, telepsych, palliative care.
So how close are we on this swing bed?
Pretty close. I mean, we have some good data that we're looking at right now. I think we just need to pull it all together to reflect on.
We were modeling after another hospital.
Well, Scott, would you say we're modeling after them? I don't know that we're modeling.
It was more of a visit to understand their operations and how they do go about it.
Yeah.
To model. The swing bed is an opportunity to expand the number of patients that we serve in the med-surg unit with very little additional cost. It's basic.
There is a possible drawback, though, I want to mention, and that is, for instance, this week we're virtually full with regular patients. If we had a number of swing beds occupied, we would have to be recusing and getting somebody moved.
That's a problem I'm prepared to manage.
Too much demand.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we don't have to, I think I asked this last time, we don't need any certificate of need or anything like that. We could just repurpose the number of beds we're allowed to.
We don't believe that this is a CNN stuff where it's within our status as a college.
I have a question about Telesite. So there's a great demand, it seems, in the community for psychiatry, but do you think that there's demand for Telesite?
I think Telesite would help us meet the demand. That's what I think. And, you know, the reimbursement does remain in question, but I also think that both Dr. Martin and I still need to do further digging because other places are making this work. So we're trying to figure out how right now. And so that's kind of the point that we're at. We're still digging.
All right. No, that's, thank you.
Can I go back to swing bed for just a minute? Because as a critical access hospital, this is a program that we can do. Libby's filled out an application to get us started. I am impatient about this, so I'm saying March 1st, and no one is listening to me. So I put March 1st out there. The Financial Sustainability Group has a process to take us through that includes informing the board as we go along. So we intend to take swing bed through that process so that you'll see the pro forma. I won't give my March 1st date, but very soon thereafter, if the board approves the program, we have a few components to add, but we should do this fairly easily. And it is, you know, incremental revenue without a lot of incremental
Any last questions? All right. Let the minutes show that I'm thanking Lisa Potter and not Dr. Martin. Thank you.
Dr. Potter.
All right, thank you. All right, next up, our CFO report. Scott Malloy.
Well, I prefer not to say too much about December if possible, but it was not a good month. It started out with weak revenue. To put it in perspective, we were about nearly $2 million below the revenue that we had in the month of November. And then we were just, and we budgeted for less revenue in the month of December, but we still came in $950,000 less than the revenue. And it was really a factor of patient volumes. As my note indicates, it was we were below budget on admissions. We were below budget on inpatient days. We were below budget on inpatient surgeries. We were 37% below budget on outpatient surgeries, and we were 19.5% below budget on diagnostic images. And it was even more apparent because we had big, a week or more of vacancies. We're not able to do MRIs, and those are big ticket studies. We started out with a significant hole and with the revenue. There was some and the other operating revenue, there was some bright spots, continue to be a bright spot with 340B. The positive variance for the month is due largely to the 340B drug discount program that we participate in, and then that big positive variance year to date is also primarily related to 340B. On the expenses, you see quite a bit of fluctuation with some of those expenses. If you look at the year-to-date column, many of our expense categories are below budget. The biggest exception being purchase services, and those purchase services are related to Cerner implementation. implementation, and we had a catch-up of almost $340,000 related to some coding that we didn't have invoices for, but we had to dig out and made an accrual for that to make sure that we have the expenses in the right period. That was, those were some expenses we didn't have, were not till the end of the year that we were able to quantify exactly what that was. We are going forward on that. Some of that coding purchase services that we were buying up to 450 hours of coding per month from an outside agency at a significant cost of nearly $100,000 a month. That helped us catch up on some of the coding and some of the revenue side of things. We're seeing the cash come through with that, but it's a significant expense. We're paying $70 an hour for coding. We're starting to, as of a couple weeks ago, we're managing that. I have a weekly call with the contract coding. We've indicated that we're going to reduce that to down to more than 160 hours a week, and we're holding to that. And watching to make sure that we don't have our AR weakness again, but we're looking at that closely. So I bring you pretty ugly December financial statement, an operating loss of $869,000 and a year-to-date loss of $752,000. And there is some, I would say we continue to make progress with days in AR. We dropped our the days in AR by about 13 days, so we're catching up with some of the billing. We're at about everything on the month of 92 days. And questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
For the patients, the inpatients, all the below budget patient numbers, is that simply due to a lack of patients requiring services or a lack of providers to perform them?
Some of it, we had some surgeons on vacations.
Some of both.
Pardon?
It's some of both.
Some of both.
Some people get sick nowadays.
Is there a way to represent that in a graphical format easily on the influences into the budget shortfalls?
Anecdotally, probably. I mean,
They're not a button on Excel or
is there a button on Excel?
Is there a button for that?
not an Excel person, so you guys do magical things with it. So
I mean, we know that Dr. Voss was gone for a couple of weeks, and he's our number one revenue generator. So you can anticipate when Dr. Voss is gone, when first people step in on charges are going to be down. So anecdotally, we follow that, but a way to really quantify it would be difficult.
Sure.
Can I, on the operating statement, since I would like to point out that if you look down at the bottom section that looks at profit and loss by service type, our clinics lost $2.4 million in 2018, which is $1 million less than they lost last year, and they did better than we had budgeted. So we spent a lot of time holding Carrie's feet to the fire, and a lot of times talking about efficiencies in our clinics, and they do really make some great gains as we add capacity and added providers. So.
Yes, from my point of view, that is a really important improvement because I've always been concerned about clinic practice and how many deliverables they're providing, and that improvement is really important. I think we should really acknowledge it.
Yeah, $1 million.
Yay.
So what have you done recently?
Give her a bonus.
Yeah.
So Scott, on page 39, you mentioned supplies were below budget, and then there was a $97,000 pharmacy inventory adjustment. Was that
That was a pickup.
Yeah, so an exchange or...
Yeah. What happened is when you do your year-end inventory, if your inventory on that you have on the shelf goes up, then it's a corresponding expense decrease.
Okay.
And so that was what that was.
And then I question, but average daily cash collections is $369,719. What is our break-even point, or what the goal? Yeah.
A day of cash for us is $205,000. That is what an average day of cash expense is, and so we actually, our overall cash position stayed flat. We paid almost $1.8 million in debt payments, and we collected more. We're catching up is what is happening with
So if we collected 205 a day,
that's the expense. That is, yeah.
So we would be okay. Or
we would be breaking even from a cash perspective.
okay.
But that's not where we want to be.
Right.
Just
We want more. Where are you going with this?
That's why I asked this. Maybe it's not a very smart question. I look at per day, revenue per day cost, and just to kind of get it rough idea. I knew we were trying to catch up on the accounts receivable. Thank you, Libby. We are down, so that's better.
That's part of that variance in purchase service though.
Yeah.
But it got us a big improvement. So
Yeah.
hopefully we can just sustain with where we are. I think we'll be able to keep bringing it down.
$70 an hour for revenue billing persons.
Coding, coding, that's right.
Yeah.
Any other questions regarding the report, numbers, graphs?
I'm just noticing that compared to last year, things are trending up.
Yeah.
was a year of investment to be up and functioning and being even starting to improve what we're doing with Cerner. You're starting to see those improvements manifest.
Other questions? Thank you. Finance Committee. Leona, did you want to talk about the Finance Committee?
Matt, I asked Roy to do that.
Okay. Roy, you're on the spot.
Okay. Well, I think everything's been covered in terms of the Finance Committee report from Scott. We do have a couple of items. The resolution for surplus property is in the packet. The total amount of that surplus is $13,929.90. And I think you have about 6 or 7 pages listing individual items. But the total on that is what we're looking at. We're asking for approval on that.
There's some real artifacts in here. These items are
Yes,
old.
there are. Yeah, that was noted.
1980, is that the oldest one? First, since January 1st, 1980, for the Silver Saber. I don't even know what the Silver Saber Imaging Service is, but
I don't think anybody does.
We used to recover silver from actual film, and you could sell sterling silver that came out of film. So I'm evidently the oldest one in the room.
oh wait, here's December 1st of 78 here for the Concha key. Wow.
Okay.
It's time
So,
to
are there any questions?
Right. Do you want to comment a little bit on our response to the surplusing issue and why it took so long to get the surplus list together and what we did about it?
It sounds like you have the details on that. Why don't you convey that to the group?
Well, we had a long list of inventory of surplus items, and these were mostly things that had not been properly surplused by the official process, but had been are no longer in use or had been given away or whatever. So we went through the list and we agreed that we needed to formally surplus them to be in compliance with the law, which we did.
So are you saying that some of these items have maybe long ago left the campus, like the 1965 file drawer? Because these would make a really fantastic exhibit.
I think a lot of this, one of the projects that Ron Erlacher, the facilities director, took on this year was emptying the tunnels under the hospital where we stored a lot of stuff. And as we emptied those, because we had leaks down there, we had problems accessing all the systems that we needed to, we moved what we needed to and what had value up to Radio Hill. But in the process of doing that, we identified things that no longer had value and just needed to go. So I think that's where a lot of these items came from. Previously, we've been hoarding them in basements. So.
Fantastic. And entertaining.
Any questions regarding this list of surplus property?
Anyway, I move for the approval of the.
Not now.
What's that, Leona? No questions?
No, I think if everyone understands what that's all about, it's good.
Okay, then Roy moves the approval of Resolution 19-03, which declares this as surplus property.
I'll second.
And I second that motion.
Okay, second from Leanna. Any additional questions or discussion?
I just have a question, what do you do with all this stuff? Take it down here.
Some of it is gone.
We should auction it for parking. Who wants a bassinet?
Chevy Yards.
I know I ask this every time when it's stuff, but does any of it have value is donated to charitable medical organizations?
Sometimes when you buy a new asset, there's an exchange, and then some of this is just the process of not taking an existing asset off the book.
Good. Any last questions? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of Resolution 19-03, please say aye.
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 Okay, unanimous, thank you. All right, next item on the agenda. As far as I know, we've never actually done this. Maybe you guys remember some things that I don't, but we're breaking out the budget specifically for board activities. So salaries of the commissioners, supplies for the meetings, travel and board education stuff. Remind me again, Julie, the professional fees.
So professional fees, these are legal fees that were previously in administration, so those are not new costs. But sort of this activity was to remind the board that they have access independently to resources like legal. So we moved $3,000 there. Under purchase services, if you wanted to have someone, we talked about the CEO evaluation process, or if there was some consulting engagement, you'd be able to do that. Again, the $1,200 that's in this budget, we took out of the administration budget. The $1,900 is for food, I believe, is that right?
Please.
Meeting, food primarily for this meeting. And Mandy and I have been working with Jim. There's just a lot of waste in the food that comes up here. So we've asked Jim Gallagher, the Director of Food and Nutrition Services, to help us reduce the waste. In the process of doing that, we found out we get leftovers anyway, so we felt better. Good leftovers. They are good leftovers. So
I asked you before you said that to let me cover up the...
That's right. So we'll be working on that, but again, moved over from administration. The education budget looks at the entire board going to Chelan and then also having the retreat there. And most commissioners, this budget's for essentially 2 conferences a year for each of the commissioners.
Including the Chelan.
No, in addition to
In addition.
So the conferences we really looked at, we have a number of people going to the AJ Rural Conference in Phoenix. There's the AJ Annual Conference that comes up in April. There's Rural Advocacy Days that there's some interest in. So those are the sorts of conferences that we looked at.
So this is, one of the nice things about this is it allows us to, I mean, this used to just be globbed under your admin budgets, and this allows us to sort of see what we're spending.
I like that.
So it's part of, I mean, it's good for us, it's good for transparency.
We thought we would bring a quarterly report so you'll see each quarter the following.
So related, so before we get to some related issues about this, are there any questions about this budget? Seems like you're assuming a drop in salaries.
Not over annualized, but we budgeted more.
All right. Any questions about this? Okay, well, related to this, then there are a couple of related issues that we should sort of talk about as a board. So one is this whether we think we need to have this finance retreat. So this came up during our CEO evaluation. It seems like there are some kind of challenges, some concerns among some board members about revenue streams, I guess, and financial sustainability. And so there was a suggestion during that special meeting that we might have a retreat, a half-day retreat, probably in March, to discuss some of the challenges and the ways that KVH is going to kind of address those financial challenges. So I guess I'll just sort of put it to the rest of the board. Is this something that you think is valuable? Right now, you know, we're talking to Scott, and he'll talk about the 2019 budget. Finance Committee apparently is doing very good work right now, and they're sort of on top of some of this with the financial sustainability stuff. And then in Chelan, we'll also talk about some of the challenges facing rural hospitals in general and how this applies to KVH. Obviously, if we think we need a special meeting, we can have it, but I'm just sort of putting it out to the board whether you think such a thing is necessary or not. Liana, I know you had an opinion on this.
Yeah, I felt that it would be good for us to have kind of a free-flowing discussion. We've heard a lot of reportage, and Scott has been very thorough, and Lydia as well. And we have, at Chelan, we have another presentation that's going to involve budget. But I've heard enough comments from members of the board who feel that maybe we should discuss how we want to go forward. And I feel that way myself. I think it would be very valuable. So I'd be in favor of it, but I don't feel it's urgent. If others don't want to do it, that's okay too.
Other thoughts, Bob?
Yeah, I'm for it. I think I'd like to see a little bit of discussion on the ability of a bond levy. Right? At what point do we look at that? At what point do we not need it? But I think we've just got to exercise all of our options.
Bob, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Whether we go there or not is up in the air. It's something that's available to us if we choose to use it. And I think we should talk about what that would mean, what the implications would be, what the resistance would be, what would the gains be.
While I'm president, I'm not sure I'm very keen on asking people for more bond money. Maybe the next president. Maybe the next president wants to do it.
The fire department.
No, I agree, and I'm not sure that's the direction we want to go, but I think it's a discussion we should have. It's kind of been silenced a long time, and I think it's at least worth a good, robust discussion.
Yeah, we can talk about that another time. I mean, it was pretty hard to scrape the middle school or even to get the regular, what do they call it for the schools, the sustaining.
Operations.
Maintenance.
I mean, if Trump gets that, I don't think they're going to get into a multi-million-dollar. Anyway, we can set that aside. So we have a couple. Bob and Liana both think that this sort of meeting would be valuable. What do you guys think?
I'm in favor of it myself. I always welcome the opportunity to learn more about financial position and implications and outside influences to our finances.
So let's, Roy?
Yeah,
Okay. So let's talk about what might be covered at such a thing. I mean, we talked about so raising this issue of bond, and what other sorts of things would we like to address at that meeting? This is just because I think we want, I mean, obviously the commissioners to be there, Julie, Scott. Does that sound like who we'd want there if we're talking specifically about financial sustainability? Yeah.
To me, it was, yeah.
So the financial sustainability group has a couple of deliverables that are coming in the next few months. One is a long-range financial plan. And the other is, well, benchmarking information on the expense side will be coming in the next few months. We also hope to move forward with a market evaluation of our charges as well, but that would be later in the year. It would be really helpful to have at least the long-range financial plan to sort of demonstrate where we're going and where we should think we need to go.
And when would that? When would that be?
We were working on the long-range financial plan. We thought we could have that done by first March.
So there's the first quarter, yeah.
First quarter.
And benchmarking as well.
Would it be too soon to do something mid to late March? Would you like us to, or would that be? What do you think? Because I don't want to jump the gun if you guys need more time.
Would early April be great?
Would April make everyone feel more comfortable?
Well, yes and no. I'll be gone for some of April, and I really feel this is critical for me to be present.
Well, we could work around that schedule.
Okay.
I mean, we could look at late March. Would that work? Is that sort of, I mean, I don't want to meet if you guys still need more time to work out the numbers.
But Matt, it's not so much about the numbers, I think, as it is about the priorities we have in our financial strategies.
It's true, but I think the thoughts here anyway were that would give us a better picture on which to sort of, to make our plans and address kind of some of the issues. Roy?
Yeah, well, and the financial indicators and metrics are going to be part of that, and I think that's an important conversation in sharing information about those indicators and metrics. I feel real good about the conversations that have taken place over the past 3 months, moving in this direction and we have a good set. And I think having an understanding among the commissioners about those indicators and what they're telling us and how they can be used for strategic decisions is important. And that is part of the financial plan. So
if we scheduled something late March, you think that would give you guys enough time?
It would for me.
Well, I'm asking the
It'll be tight. It'll be tight. And I think there may be some iterations of that long-range financial plan. I think what we bring forward, you may want to change some assumptions and revise it. So I think it's a bit of a working document.
Okay. So that would be all right to give us what you have at that point, even if it's not nailed down. Still kind of.
Yes, because I reiterate, it's not about the numbers, as it more is about addressing our basic position and thinking of where we want to go in the future. But I think the board as a whole should be part of that. It shouldn't just be those of us in finance areas.
No, it's true, but I think one of the points Roy mentioned was it's good to sort of know where we are and to have the data that we can kind of, it'll help us to make some of those calls.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that.
Well, let's then just tentatively look for something in late March.
I think that's good.
Is that okay?
Agreed.
Is that all right?
Timing wise then, that gives us time between that meeting and then your follow-up meeting in Chelan, and see where that conversation is at the long range financial plan.
And so things that we want from Scott and Julie at that meeting. Well, first we are going to talk about the possibility of bond measure. What do we want? Like, what do we want to talk about? What do we want them to come prepared to tell us or to do? I just want to make sure that we're clear about the purpose of the meeting for them especially. We may just want to shoot the breeze, but I think they want to know what we're going to expect from them.
I think annual trends over the past few years, so we can compare budget and actuals where we've been.
Did you guys want to look at specific service lines and things? How specific do we want to get?
I mean, we have some potential risks with, some reimbursement models potentially changing, and where's the ACO going to really take us? And so I sure don't want to have another year like last year. We see how that kind of projects out what our risk potential.
Would it make sense to have a small subcommittee work together to itemize some issues for discussion before that retreat?
Scott, yeah.
I mean, if you and Roy want to talk to Scott specifically about some of the things that might be good to bring to the entire board at a retreat, I mean, I'm open to that.
Yeah.
Bob, are you good with that?
Yeah.
Or excuse me, Roy.
Yes, that could work.
So why don't we make that happen? I will be back on February 8th, and maybe right after that.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. With Scott, is that all right to give us some guidance?
Well, we won't have much by February 8th.
Oh no, I don't think they want data from you. I think the idea is they will tell you what we're going to want to talk about.
Yeah, it's more about itemizing discussion items.
Yeah, in late March.
So you have, late March, you have the provider appreciation dinner and the continuing medical education with evidence base going on. Spring break.
Thank you.
So maybe first part of April.
Yeah, first part of April is fine with me. Leanna, when are you gone?
I'm leaving, I will be gone from April 1st until, I can't remember when I get back, 16th or 17th. But again, it isn't about specific data points. It's more of a strategic discussion, which I think we can have if we don't even have all the current information. So I'd ask for late March, just because I obviously want to be very involved in this.
Well, I think Bob was worried a little bit about overload, since there are other things going on in late March. But we could. I mean, we could.
Or even Bob, even mid-March. I mean.
Well, that.
Roy, presumably it would be you and me, right?
That kind of squeezes. Yeah, that kind of squeezes things with the financial stuff. And I know you said we don't need specifics, but I think Scott, being, I assume, a numbers guy, wants to sort of come in with having some of the data
Specifics.
without, those of us in the humanities might like to talk. But I think he probably wants to have the numbers with him. So I guess the question is whether we want to try to squeeze it in late March with all the other stuff going on, or whether we want to do something more along the lines of mid-April.
I'm thinking also that it probably would be more appropriate to happen before the board retreat.
Yeah.
if that's gonna be in mid to late March, maybe we could make this happen a little bit before that, just so when we go to that retreat, we have done our homework and have a sense of what the lines are, the limits are.
Are you talking about the board retreat in June? Is there another
No,
one?
we didn't agree to cancel the March board retreat on finances, did we?
That's what we're talking about.
Right.
I think they're one and the same.
Yeah, they're the
That's
same
my
thing.
understanding.
Okay,
That's what we're talking about now. So, yeah, we're just talking about when we're gonna have it. Anyway, we'll try to work it out, and Mandy, you can talk to us about our schedules. We'll either work something out for late March or mid-April. In the meantime, Roy and Leanna, you guys can talk to Scott about specifics.
okay, that works.
All right, so that's the first thing. Second issue, and this is really more of an update for the board members. Julie and Mandy and I have been sort of working on this, our retreat in Chelan. We're going to have that retreat on Sunday before the WISHA meeting starts. Right now we have 2 speakers, or 2 guests who are going to come and talk to us, then one more who Julie's going to talk about. Tom Everett is going to talk about well, I'll let Julie talk about it. But so we have Tom Everett, John Flink, who have agreed to come and talk to us, and then she's also going to be talking to Jacqueline Barton True. Julie, would you mind talking a little bit about what each of those people might be able to address for us?
So the 2 topics that we're looking to cover with an outside perspective are sort of global finance issues. Tom Everett is the current Chief Financial Officer of the Washington State Hospital Association, but he's also one of the partners from Arthur Andersen, KPMG, in the Pacific Northwest, and he has 30 years of auditing and reporting on hospitals. So there were 3 people who really ran that practice in the Pacific Northwest, and Tom was one of them. I reached out to him today, and he'd be happy to come talk to you about what he looks for in a strong organization. And I've spelled out a couple of your initiatives, including the fact that this community and this board enjoys having an independent organization, but wants to build on partnerships. And then also the fact that we don't collect taxes, and so some unique things about us. So Tom will come, and then there was also an ask to look at the political landscape, federal and state. And John Flink has agreed to come and talk about what's going on back in Washington, D.C. And Jacqueline Barton True is the Vice President of Rural Affairs at Washington State Hospital Association. This is a long legislative session, and they've come out of the gate with a lot of issues, labor issues, conditions of employment. So she's down in Olympia a lot of the time right now, and between John and Jacqueline, I think that would make a good political presentation. Jacqueline also is spearheading the rural initiatives, so it would be good for her to get to know you and you to know who Jacqueline was as well.
So the nice thing about this group of people is it gives us a sense of the big picture in terms of kind of federal legislation. It also helps us understand the challenges in the state and what's going on here, what makes a strong kind of independent community hospital, and some of the challenges and opportunities for rural health care. So there's quite a bit covered there.
And they're all free.
And they're all free. All right. So I've just, we have the date all set, we have the room all set. So it's really just a matter of getting the board's stamp of approval for that slate of guests. Does that sound good?
Now, what time are we scheduled to start?
I don't remember. I mean,
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock, 1:30, something like that. So we'll.
Since we have to come over there and check in, could we start with lunch? Could we have lunch?
Well, let me look at our budget.
We could get a Happy Meals.
I'll bring you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. We'll talk about that. Yeah, we can talk about starting times and kind of hash that out. The main thing at this point is just to make sure, since these guests, we want to make sure they can plan ahead and know that. Is everybody all right with this kind of slate of guests and this kind of plan? And then we'll nail down the specifics about when. It's going to be on that Sunday, but time start, and we'll nail that down over email or something. But is everybody all right with that plan?
Sounds good to me.
Great. Okay. Thanks to Julie for talking to those three people and getting them to come talk to us. I appreciate that. The third issue, and this is the last one, related to kind of board budget and board expenses. One of the things that this board's been doing, maybe a little more than some other boards, is to try to stay on top of trends in healthcare. And so some of us have been traveling to different educational opportunities. Julie's been very helpful in helping to identify, which are the more valuable opportunities and which maybe not so much. I talked to her about this, and Julie can correct me if I'm wrong or jump in, but she seems to think that these are important, that it's good for us to be on top of some of these trends in healthcare, so that we don't sort of get ossified and just sort of fall into ruts and various things. But one question that came up was, since we are elected positions, and since our terms end at a certain point, whether there might be a certain point in a person's term when we would stop funding travel for educational opportunities for people who, say, weren't planning to run again for another position, or for their, to run to keep their position. Now, one of the things that I wanted to bring up, because one question that arose was, what if someone's not sure they're going to run? We don't want to cut people off prematurely. The filing week in any given year is in mid-May, okay, to file to run for these local positions. So one kind of proposal I'll just put forward to people was, one of the things we may want to do as a board is just decide that since Chelan is sort of an annual meeting that the whole board tends to go to, it's fairly local, it's valuable, it's run by WISHA, and it's also a good chance for the board to kind of talk about some issues together in a different setting. One option would be for the board to make some sort of policy where someone who wasn't running for re-election in a given year would, their final, say, educational opportunity elsewhere would, funded by the hospital, would be the Chelan retreat, the WISHA retreat in Chelan. So that would be one way to not kind of penalize people who aren't quite sure until May, say, whether they're going to run. But it would also provide some way to be kind of fiscally responsible and not, say, send someone to DC in September if they're not going to be on the board in January. So I don't know how people feel about, one possibility would be the board just doesn't have a policy at all, and people can just, as long as they're on the board, go to these things. Another option would be to cut things off earlier, but I was thinking that this might be a good kind of compromise position. I don't know how other board members feel about this.
I have a couple thoughts on that. I agree that fiscal responsibility is good, and I want our budget and actuals to reflect well upon us. My concern about limiting somebody's potential to go to conference, say, or go to DC, if there are no other board members available to go, and we still decide representation and only member available is that one who would have been tied out of their educational travel opportunities. We might be hamstring ourselves to not allow that.
Other thoughts?
I think it's a good idea. Makes common sense. And I'm surprised that a university professor came up with the idea.
I don't feel,
Yeah,
I feel it should be a little more anecdotal. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with a policy. I don't know why we need a policy. I mean, we can choose to attend a conference or not, and my thinking is if we're not going to run again, we would probably smartly make the decision not to attend, but somehow a policy feels a little draconian to me.
Well, I think it's really just a question of what rationale we would have to limit someone. And that's what a policy would allow us to do.
I'd be interested in hearing Julie's thoughts on this.
Well, we have 3 commissioners up for election in 2019, and again, to me, it's not a matter of the gap between May and November. I don't think anybody's trying to handicap who would win if there were people running against you. It's a commissioner who determines that they are not going to run again. I agree. It's a hard sell to say if you're not going to be here next year to go back to Washington to learn about emerging issues. So I'm more interested in folks who may or may not decide to run.
Yeah, that would be the if we did adopt a policy, it would not apply to. It would only apply to people who had decided and decided not to run and not filed during the filing week in mid-May.
Which would be evidenced by their name not being on the auditors.
Yes. So this is not about people who had filed and chosen to run for re-election, but have not yet been elected. It's not about those people. It's people who in May decide not to.
We're not judging people by like horse racing statistics.
No, not like that. So this is just about a person who decides not to run, does not file in May. One proposal would be that their final board education would be, at least outside of Ellensburg, would be the WISHA retreat in June.
Can I suggest that if we did adopt that the board could at its discretion request such a member to attend something if the need arose?
I mean, sure, we can make exceptions to it, but what we could do is have it be, requiring board approval, right?
That sounds fair.
So that exceptions could be made, but only with the approval of the majority of the board or something like that.
So I hear that makes a certain amount of common sense, but I'm wondering, what do you feel is the need to, what has prompted this need?
Well, I think it's just a matter of being, seeing the budget now and realizing that it costs money to send people to these places. And really the idea that we're investing in the hospital, right? And that the reason that we're doing this is because commissioners who engage in these educational opportunities can, there's a value added to their work with KVH.
Strengthening the board.
Yeah, and strengthening the board. And then so that if they're not going to remain on the board by their own choice, that the cost benefit would just drop. I think that's the idea.
So that makes a lot of sense to me, but do we need a policy to make that happen? I mean, do you think that people who had chosen not to run, and maybe I'm wrong about this, would opt to attend conferences when they know they won't be around in the long run, or?
I think the idea was that a policy would give us some rationale to deny someone, right? Because if someone who decides not to run says that they want to go somewhere in November, on what basis can I, as president of the board, tell them no? If there's no board policy, then I have no ground to stand on. And then it's just a sort of back and forth. And I want to get the board's thoughts on this. And if there is a policy, then there's some ground to stand on to deny someone. If not, then and if it were up just if there's no policy, then it just becomes wishing or hoping that the person decides not to. I'd rather have a clear, promulgated sort of rule.
I think having a policy demonstrates responsibility and good stewardship of funds.
Erica, I can't hear you. I think you're making a good point.
Right here in the microphone. I'll say it again. I think that having a policy demonstrates responsibility and good stewardship of funds. So even if we never have to use the policy or enforce it, simply having it is I think a show of good faith to the community by which our funds come. Ultimately.
Okay, thanks.
So so if we did have such a thing, we would basically, I guess, vote. If we wanted this to be official, I suppose we would. The motion would be that someone who does not declare an intent to run for re-election during the official filing week in mid-May would not go to any out-of-town sort of hospital-funded hospital-funded educational opportunities past the annual WISHA meeting in Chelan in June, except with the majority of the board's approval, to make an exception.
So moved.
Second. Okay, so yeah, that's a mouthful. So that's so Roy makes a motion to approve. Bob seconds that motion. Hopefully, Mandy, you got something down resembling what that looks like. This would allow for exceptions, but it would show some kind of fiscal responsibility, and it would. I think one of the other things it does is it emphasizes the value of these opportunities when we do, pursue them. The idea is that there's got to be some value for the organization, and it does. And this says that the value is not for the individual commissioner's sort of, personal growth, but the idea is that we bring something back to the organization. Are there any questions or further discussion about this motion? Okay. Hearing none, then all those in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I'm going to vote no.
Okay. All right, 4-1. Thank you for that. I think that's all we have regarding this our specific board budget. But we can talk about it at a future date because we are going to get quarterly reports, and I think this is a valuable thing. Okay, so next is something obviously a lot less important than what we've been talking about. Approval of the 2019 budget. All right. So who would like to get us started?
I move for the approval of the 2019 budget presented by the CFO, Scott Olander.
I'll second. Any questions or additional discussion regarding the 2019 budget? Any questions? All right, so we have a motion from Bob to approve, and then seconded by Roy. Right?
Roy.
Okay, Roy moved and Bob seconded. Any additional discussion, questions? Okay, so all those in favor of approving the 2019 budget, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous, thank you. Anything else, Scott, regarding the, anything else you need or any other questions for Scott before we move on?
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thanks for all the work you've been doing. Okay, next, operations. Vicki, you're up.
Hello. My report is kind of brief too. I had to seek for information. I just wanted to update you on the Phillips project as well. We had a walkthrough with IT and the engineers, and that was last week. So we are continuing on that journey. Just to update you, I think we had asked for an additional monitor that was not included in the first quote. However, we learned last week that Phillips acknowledged that that was their error. So we will not have to purchase that additional monitor. So that's $13,000. Any questions?
Yes. Can you tell me a bit about the Blue Band initiative for the workplace?
So this is something nationwide, a new initiative for recognizing post and pre and postpartum moms who have preeclampsia, which continues through delivery into post-delivery phases, can be up to 6 weeks after the mom delivers it. They're still able to manifest symptoms, and most of that's high blood pressure, and most of it's, sometimes if it's untreated, can cause stroke and adverse reactions to the mom. So this is to identify those patients at risk for preeclampsia and post-delivery eclampsia, so that if this person presents to a facility, say an ER or a clinic or an urgent care, doesn't feel well, they will have on them a blue band that they will wear for 6 weeks post-delivery, and that would alert the provider and or the nurse when they're taking that information that, oh my gosh, I see that blue band. We'll keep that in mind as we work you up, because that might be part of the presenting issue.
Has this been implemented elsewhere? Is this I've not heard of it before this came out in our packet. Is it a new program, or are other hospitals already doing it with success?
I think it's relatively new. However, I do know that there are some hospitals who already have this implemented. I don't know when it first became obvious. Do you mean?
No, but I do think a lot of it came out of a particular person from Yakima that worked at Yakima Memorial a few years ago, and it hasn't taken off, but it is one of the things that's been referenced that can really help decrease morbidity with moms. I don't know if you remember that article that came out from USA Today that was referenced. So I think that has kind of shone a new light on the opportunities for this program. It's a really beautiful program. It just didn't quite take off everywhere as fast as it could, right?
Is it a silicone band, like an awareness band?
Yes. It involves so much more than just KVH. It's the clinics, it's the community, the whole community, the emergency, right. So it's a huge educational opportunity in the program.
How soon do we hope to have that rolled out completely?
Well, she's been working on it, I think before within the first 6 months of this year.
Great. Thank you.
Any additional questions for Vicki? Thank you very much. Next up, Rhonda Holden. She's not here. We saw her report. Are there any discussion items regarding her report?
I would just echo what she says about construction being underway in the 309 building, so OT and speech. I think we're looking at being in there in March, but we anticipate that that's going to come in under the new budget years first. So, and that really will be just a tremendous operating facilities that those patients are using, and will also allow us to do a lot with pediatrics and the pediatric program. But that is work in progress.
And it's in the report here, it looks like it's an improvement to that.
Yeah.
Which is great. Any other questions regarding Rhonda's report? Okay. Next up, clinic operations. Very well.
And I have nothing else to add other than what's listed, and I'm taking the questions you might have.
Any questions for Terry?
The projection when the clinic will be finished and built?
Sure. I have a projection. So that's actually been the topic of the day. I was up there today. We're hoping, Ron had said next week he's hoping to have a more solid timeline. We were told it was going to take a month, and he said, let me get you a solid timeline by next week. So that's what he's told. They keep running into stuff as we do with these types of things, and digging in further, and the water just really destroyed the floor, and it just continues to warp other areas, and So there was bathroom doors. We thought we were able to use some bathrooms, and then aisles were starting to kind of buckle up, and so it's just really causing some damage. We did, however, we find coverage for the asbestos issue.
Okay.
So we may not need to cover that.
Any other questions about a report or the dashboard? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is the Community Relations Report. Michelle.
I really don't have anything to add to it. I was happy Bob did point out end of March is a very busy time between the Provider Appreciation Dinner, where email save the dates will be going out and official invites will be going out in the middle of February. But that will be going on March 27th. Dr. Martin talked about his group that's coming in right before EVM, which is March 28th and through, or actually the 29th and 30th. 28th is a pre-workshop, and I believe that's when Dr. Martin has his meeting as well. So just important days to keep on your calendar. This Saturday is the CWU sponsorship basketball game. I have Julie and Bob's tickets. They'll be accepting recognition for that. Thank you very much.
And halftime.
But if you have any questions.
When is, I'm sorry, what's the timing on the newsletter?
Timing of the newsletter is actually, Jan and I started working on that this week to put our stories together. So I would say getting it out would probably be mid-February. Where Julie and I were talking today, we're also going to do a community benefit report, probably late April. So there are pieces of the community benefit report which involve financial benefit and things like that to the community. But we'll have part of where we do our partnerships in the newsletter, and then the benefit report will expand upon that.
A community benefit report is new to me. How is that disseminated?
My plan is that we would probably send that out in mailboxes, definitely website, but I think it's worthwhile to go out in the mail. Can you do your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I find this to be a really useful tool, and it talks about programs that we supplement, and we talk about things like uncompensated care and what that means, and where we contribute in the community. We're also going to use it to do sort of a by the numbers thing, talk about growth, talk about access, swim lessons, and just sort of good news stories that shine a light really on the way KDH contributes to the community.
And the newsletter, is that also going to go out?
Newsletter will cover some of it, but it's primarily going to be a strategic plan update.
Yeah.
So talking about this is where we said we were going to go, this is kind of what we've been doing, and then also this is what's happening. You will have more information on MAC timelines 309.
Right, but how is that going to be disseminated?
Oh, that gets mailed out to all the addresses in the county.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember this was a while ago, maybe a year or so ago, somebody raised the question of whether that was worth it. I think I like the idea.
I think we've cut the number of newsletters we do in absolute to a third of what we used to do.
Okay. Well, I think it's a good idea for both of those. Any other questions or?
I'd like to call attention to the signage, which is lovely.
So the signs that are mounted on the building should be lit. The monument sign will be lit in the spring when they can go through the concert.
And then, the video ads for the theater, who puts those together? Like, who actually produces? She does all of that. Does she like do the filmography and record them herself too?
No, so we actually have a subscription, just like you can have a subscription for stock photos. We have a subscription for videos. It's pretty nominal cost. I don't remember what it is. Outside of that, it's just a lot of editing. If you walk by and her door is closed and it says I'm doing video stuff, she's gotten people to do voiceovers. Julie has done one, employees to do voiceovers. So she puts all that together. She writes out the scripts. She asks the questions. It's all Jen.
They always look top notch, so I'm impressed.
I'll pass that along. She's also taken over story writing, probably since early fall. So all of the stories and the new blogs, she's putting out a blog every other week that's focusing on the non-patient care areas of the hospital. She's doing 1 to 2 patient stories every month. And then these videos for the cinema are every 2 months, not to mention the random things that you see for Central Sterile or Fun and Eat or something like that.
Nice. On her part.
Can I just also highlight the fact that they are working closely with Hospital District 2, Medic 1, IAFF 1488, sharing a lot of social media stories. So you'll see their brand new shiny ambulance from Hospital District 2 on our Facebook page. And the website and the social media they have up there, they're sharing our KDH stories as well. So we're getting a lot of cross coverage.
Other questions? All right, thank you. Okay, education and board reports. So there's a meeting coming up that was referenced in early February in Arizona. A few of us are going to go to that. And then there's an AHA annual membership meeting in April in DC. Julie speaks really highly of this, and so if you're interested, I've never been to this one, but considering.
You went to the AHA annual meeting.
It was good. It was really good.
So I may.
The night before the FBI director was fired.
That's right. That's right. We saw Comey the day before.
That's right.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's something to consider, and get in touch with Mandy if you're interested. No old business. All right, new business. A couple things here. Resolution number 19-01, terminating the PHC interlocal agreement and implementing the new WRHC local agreement. Julie, you want to just talk briefly about that?
So the process to change like basic membership in the Washington Rural Health Collaborative and their associated contracting group has been really clunky just because of the corporate documents, the way the bylaws have been set up. So this is a resolution that cancels the existing participation in the Washington Rural Health Collaborative and replaces it with new, more streamlined processes in the future. So hopefully as we add members or members drop out, we won't have to go through this again. But right now it's set up that every time the membership changes, everyone in the hospital has to take a resolution to the board. So that's what it is, and I would appreciate, I would recommend to ask the board to approve it.
Are there any questions about this resolution?
I have a lot, but I don't just quite like to fully grasp the intention of this, but it's just a different recognition of membership in the...
Yeah, so the Washington Rural Health Collaborative there's two organizations under that umbrella. One is the collaborative itself. The other is called the PHD.
Okay.
And the PHD is the contracting arm or contracting function under the Washington Rural Health Collaborative. So you are not automatically admitted to the Washington Rural Health Collaborative. They go through and sort of talk about, you have to be a good participant, you have to have something to add. So the board of the collaborative votes on new members. And then if a new member is accepted, like we were last year, all of the existing members have to take this very resolution back to their board, expanding membership in the collaborative.
Did we do this before when somebody else came on board? Was it the same one?
With Lincoln.
Okay.
Came on. Yeah.
All right.
And hopefully we won't have to do it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, then do I have a motion to approve resolution number 19-01? Okay, motion to Erica makes a motion. Second from Roy. Okay, so any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of resolution number 19-01, terminating the PhD interlocal agreement, implementing the new WRHC interlocal agreement, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, unanimous, thank you. Next is resolution 19-02. This is fairly easy to understand, I think. Designating Scott Olander as treasurer of Kittitas County Public Hospital District Number 1. I believe, yeah, his, this is going to be on the, anyway. All right. Scott's name is not Scott. I just heard. So is that going to be changed on any of this?
It's changed on the official.
So just keep that in mind, that if you see another name on it, it's the same guy. Right?
His mother calls him Dale.
The one that we signed is going to work just slightly.
Right.
Anyway, so any questions about this? Fairly straightforward. Should we throw confetti?
Pop a champagne now or a whole cookie.
All right. Okay, so hearing no further discussion, do I have a motion to approve resolution number 19-02? Erica makes a motion. Second.
So, a second.
All right, second from Diana. All those in favor of resolution number 19-02, designating Scott O'Lander as treasurer of Kittitas County Public Hospital District 1, please say aye. Aye. Okay, unanimous. Thank you. And congratulations. All right. Next on the agenda is talking about the strategic plan. Okay. So I think we have our handy dandy little brochure here. So this is a chance for us to talk about what we like and really want to keep, things we might want to change, adjust. I know that there might be some suggestions for things to adjust. I don't know who would like to kind of get us started on this conversation. Is there anybody who'd like to kind of jump in on this? Get us started. Julie, you have any thoughts to?
Well, it's been a little over a year since the board adopted the strategic plan, and I guess in addition to reviewing those proposed changes from the different strategy groups, I'd like to officially adopt those. But just to talk about how it's working for you, when you look at those tactics, are we doing the work? Do we still like what we said we needed to be doing, what the direction was? So we talked about access and the way we were going to achieve access. Do you feel like we're moving in the right direction a year in?
For access, I think we definitely are. The new service lines that, the new service lines that we're investigating and the ones that are already open and are in the works currently. I think the budget, the clinics being the gold star in the budget of having alleviated a little bit of that deficit is a testament to more patients being able to be seen in the clinic. I personally think we're on a good track with access.
I agree. I think it's, I think most of us would say, well, it'd be good to get to the end point, but it's a big boat to turn, so.
When do you think it's going to be done? Did you hear him?
It's a big boat, it's a barge.
Yeah, it's a barge.
It's a barge.
So, but I think it's making a difference in the community discussions, that I hear, and I think it's great.
I think recruitment continuing, I imagine that's just going to be a perpetual thing. We're going to keep an eye on. I can't see us ever being full up as a community and continue to grow.
Community engagement, the deliverables there to promote personal health and well-being in the community, build community trust and transparency, and be a strong community partner. Is that the word?
I don't want to toot my own horn with my group, so I'll let somebody else speak up here. Oh, it's a good group.
Looks great.
I particularly like the red.
Right?
Partnerships and collaboration, support and develop a cohesive medical community, invest in the well-being, development, and training of KVH employees, seek collaborative relationships to expand or improve service offerings, and keep care local. enhance relationships with strategic partners, District 2 and the foundation. I would, I know Carrie has a lot of plans around staff development and employee development for 2019, and I would say that's the place where we're seeing a lot of change.
But it still falls under the rubric of these, in the strategic area and the items listed.
Yeah, so that's right. That would be investment in well-being, development, and training of KVH employees. So that's something that we're really going to emphasize. Mandy, do you have any suggestions, any thoughts? Does this look good to you?
I think so. I think we're working really hard on it. I feel like we're getting closer to achieving this too. I think we're on the right track.
More so than the other three?
I didn't say you can say it.
It's a competition.
That was a rhetorical question.
Some of your other three bullet points or the other three?
The other three. All right. Yeah, I mean, I like it too. But any thoughts for adjustments?
No, I think we learned a lot about the third, though, the seek collaborative relationships to expand. I think we thought that that would be, you know, kind of one thing at a time, and it's a lot more than that. Probably thanks in part to Lisa caught it.
So once we talk about all these, I think it would be good to go back and look at the business plan and look at the suggested changes, as Julie mentioned, and then we'll look at those more specifically. So this is really just at this level. Financial sustainability, then. Maintain positive operating margins, strong cash reserves, be adaptive and responsive in order to grow our market share, and maintain access to capital. Scott, you weren't involved in the process of forming these, so maybe you have suggestions for tinkering with it, or people on the board have ideas. Roy, any thoughts? Are there, I mean, anybody, but Scott and Roy specifically, do you have any ideas for how things you might want to add, change?
I just feel like once we finalize the indicators and metrics, and once we get the long-term financial plan put together, we'd probably be in a better position to say that this captures everything that we're trying to do in this particular area. I think a lot of progress has been made. I don't think it needs to be refreshed at this point at all, Scott. Libby,
Is there anything that you do and you think is really important that's not captured? I mean, these are very broad, obviously, and there are a lot of specifics in what you do that fall under these. But is there anything that you think is missed by these?
Well, we are in the process of amending some of the documentation that is provided to the Finance Committee to, enable an overview. But right now, I think we are in a very good place. And I agree with what Roy said.
Okay. Anything to add to that? Do we want to look at the core values too? Respect, recognize the dignity of patients and staff, and treat them with compassion, quality, excellent safe care for members of our community, healing environment, service, culture where patients come first in all we do, transparency, principled, accountable, do the right thing, openness, and honesty, collaboration, work as a team in partnership with the broader medical community to ensure our patients receive the best care.
My input here is how do we evaluate how well we are adhering to core values from day to day, month to month, as an organization and as individuals? I don't have an answer for that, but I think it's important to evaluate. It's great to profess that we have values, but is there a way to ensure that we are adhering to them?
As I understand it, and this, I may have this wrong, but the sort of values are in some ways, they inform the specific strategies, right? So the way that we measure how we do it is in the specific goals, which we'll talk about in a moment, the specific goals we have for accomplishing each one of these points under the strategy.
I agree with you there, but I think that these core values are also applicable to individuals in the organization, all individuals, and on a more granular level than through the strategic plan. So, all that to say is that I do have this concern that we, to ensure that we are adhering to it, I don't have a solution to measure that or to know if it's measurable.
So that's interesting because Carrie Youngblood and I have been talking a lot about designing the next questions for Tiny Pulse. And we kind of, not necessarily deliberately, but we kind of get at that. And we can actually ask a series of 5 questions. How well do we adhere to our, as an organization, to our core value of respect? And remind them what that is. I will tell you, we do new employee orientation once a month, and I go over these, and they're meaningful. I mean, I talk about them way too long. So asking those questions in Tiny Pulse might give us an idea.
Would it be possible, in addition to asking on an organizational level, ask respondents to reply with their thoughts on maybe how it's carried out within their department or just in their daily work? Because that could be a very different perception of how the organization behaves versus how individuals are behaving. If it maybe the service where patients come first and all we do, if maybe employees are getting the feeling that the organization definitely promotes that, but maybe overhearing phone calls or interactions with patients, if that's not being manifest there, if that seems to be a trend, we would want to check in on that.
Okay.
If you look at all the VERG reports that we go over, you would see that it's being very well monitored internally.
And I wonder if there's a way, let us work on how we can answer that question. One of the things we've started doing is repeating questions from the previous years to see if we've made any progress or not. I think it's typical when we ask questions about the department. In the responses and comments, we get a lot of "my department is great." It's those guys, so some of that sort of stuff.
I just want to make sure that we are walking the walk of our talk daily. So I don't have any reason to think that we're not. It's just that it's good to check in on that.
So looking back, as I kind of thought back on our strategic plan, it was a pretty long process at the beginning, and it was a pretty big shift on our emphasis in more community and staff and the whole changing the core values. The real work comes from Julie, the senior leadership. I mean, you guys are the ones tracking it, and then the staff buying into it. But I think we're making it's the little things in life that can make a really big difference. And whether it's sponsoring swimming or a basketball game or something like that, just builds on some trust. And I think some of that trust has been eroded because of and not in our hospital, but in healthcare, because of all the craziness that's out there. And it's more about being siloed, more about patient volumes, and it is about that individual person and really how do you impact that individual person. And I think this really kind of gets back to whether it's the providers or the individual patient or that experience that you're having with that person you're providing care for, that kind of regrounds us. You really need that. And I think it's super important, but really kind of buying in and saying, this is what we are. This is more about us and what we can do, and that more of an intimacy with the county. So I think it's great. I'm super proud of it. I know we're not there. We're doing our best and modifying it, but we're moving in the right direction.
Aspirational goals.
Mm-hmm.
Other thoughts before we start looking at specific changes to our sort of strategies, outcomes? Any questions or thoughts about the larger plan? So Roy, you're all right? You buy into this? Yeah.
All the work I put in. No, it's, you know, I have done a lot of work in strategic planning with other organizations, and this is really well done. And the thing I've been most impressed with since February the 12th when I came on board was the extent to which it's being integrated into the culture of KBH and as you stated about the role of the senior leaders who keep it moving forward, and we get communications about it at every one of our meetings. And I'm impressed with the extent to which it's easy to write a strategic plan. It's the implementation that really creates the problem. And if you don't have it from the top, sort of cascading from the top and bubbling up from the bottom, I think it's there. I think that is there. And whether have we achieved what we set out to achieve, it's a process and not an endpoint. And so this thing will continue to be revised over time and hopefully outlive us commissioners. So I really commend all the people that have been involved in this.
Great.
Well done.
All right. So I think sounds like we're all right with this. So let's talk about the specific strategies and the specific sort of outcomes for each strategy and the suggested changes. So let's start then. So we'll go back to page 16 in your packet. So we're looking at access specifically again. So this is the reports on the business plan. So this is just specific suggested changes. So page 16 under access. So a few changes under strategy 2, design care models and processes to meet patient needs. So there was this one change to create the patient-centered medical home plan, prepare for ACO enrollment, which created behavioral health plans for patients. So these are things that were done, that were added. But then for 2019, implement a swing bed program under strategy 2 there. That's all right. You can share. So and Vicki or Carrie can jump in here about that seems to be the main change under 2019.
Yeah, and also with the just knowing that the PCMH and that preparation for ACO is just an ongoing strain throughout that strategy for 2019. We have our kickoff next week.
Okay, so these things were initiated in 2018 and will persist in 2019. So, I don't think I don't remember the process. I don't think we actually, did we vote on all this stuff?
No, I
So it's
think,
really just
yeah, so at the end of the review, if you could just acknowledge those pieces that you think we should adopt into the business plan.
So,
Matt, excuse me, can you give me a page number?
page 16.
16, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so we're looking specifically at the type in red that indicate changes that were made and that are being suggested to be made. So these are ongoing things from 2018, and then on page 17, there's this note about the swing bed program to contribute to strategy 2. And all we're looking for is the board to acknowledge these things and generally to approve of these things as being added to the business plan. Are there any questions or anything else that you'd like to add, or things that you think need to be revised? Are people fine with these additions? Any thoughts?
I mean, I think there's a lot of work that's going into this on a continual basis, and any of the initiatives that are being developed are discussed in that group. They're identified in some document that comes to us, and we are all, let's say we, the commissioners, are represented in those various committees. And it seems to me if there's any problem that emerges, we can bring that to our fellow commissioners and discuss them. Other than that, I think the people who are involved in implementing the plan and the concept behind it is that they're doing the job. I don't know if we have to go through and look at each item and say yay or nay to those things. It seems to me those are the kinds of conversations that are taking place in those meetings with those committees. I know, a couple of times I think I sat in for you on the QI committee, and man, the depth of discussion was pretty significant, and I know what's been going on with financial sustainability. So I'm not sure, I feel comfortable looking at this and saying, yeah, we should do this or do that. Certainly the item regarding the swing bet is going to come through the new service line flow chart that has been put together and information gathered, and that will come to the board.
Yeah.
So I don't know, are we just wasting our time going through all of this again, or is this needed?
I think it's really just the suggested changes, since the whole board hasn't seen those additions or deletions. I think it's just a matter of giving the whole board a chance to either say, that they do have concerns, and wait, don't take that off, kind of thing, or suggest that there's something else to add. I mean, yeah, we all have a lot of confidence in the leadership and in the board members who are on these different pieces of the plan. But it's just a chance for people to have a say in where things are going in general. If people are okay with those three, then we can move on with the next one. People all right with that? Yes. All right, so then moving on to community engagement. So, community engagement on page 26. This might be a way to kind of focus things, because this is where they list the proposed changes to upcoming deliverables. So, discussion about tobacco-free campus, and then just moving some of the timing, right, on a couple of things. So this is, and then just different reports that will be given. Yeah, anything to add to this, Michelle?
You pretty much summed it up. I mean, basically, yeah, there are different reports. Where we added things, for example, Carrie in her Crappie plan, talking about HR reporting out on the wins for Tiny Pulse. We wanted to make that visible. So that was something that we added as a new deliverable. We wanted to show the board that this is how we're actually acting on that. So I think that was worth calling out on that. Otherwise, the primary is just a lot of report outs. With the tobacco-free campus, we really felt, let's make that a little bigger conversation with the employee community and do more of a health and wellness survey on what are their appetites and needs for different things, and include tobacco-free campus in that type of thing. So we're not just taking a wild stab at it here at the board meetings or at administration. What are the employees going to think? Do they even want this? How are we going to roll it out? So that's how we said, okay, let's get the viewpoint at a bigger thing, and then we'll make the decision.
Carrie, you have anything to add?
She's used all my words,
Okay.
all of them. Unless there's any questions you have.
So, any questions or comments on these suggested changes to the deliverables? Sound good? Alrighty. Thank you for those suggestions. All right. So next up, partnerships and collaborations. Page 32, focus on that. So, these are some suggested changes. So review the medical staff leadership plan and executive session. Moving the annual provider recognition banquet. So this is just to reflect when they're going to be. Rural rounds and so transitioning radiology services, which again you guys we talked about that. Right? And then strategy 2. Internal assessment, so this is about this is sort of an HR assessment of hard to fill positions, and then how to manage, strategies for how to manage that, and how to try to fill them if we can. We're going to evaluate the MA program, and then the compensation committee, which we've renamed. Right? That's the compensation committee.
Yes.
Yeah. And then specific evaluations, changing timelines, and then a review of these new services we put in place. You had a couple of question marks there. Mandy, did you want us to weigh in on those specific ones, like the rural rounds or the collaboration?
Well, I think we were just asking, does that relate to strategy 4 as that connection with the greater medical community, but also with the foundation? That's our foundation.
Would you mind just explaining briefly what you mean by rural rounds?
So it's actually the morbidity and mortality review, so M&M, that we've had as a partnership with CHCW. So that's where it fits in this strategy. And they changed the name recently to Rural Rounds. That was part of that building that cohesive community recently, because M&M kind of has a punitive connotation in the past. And we used to pay, KVH would pay for the meals there, and also they had limited CME. It was only level 2, and now trying to transition to level 1, but there's a cost associated with that. So the foundation has a Solberg Leadership Fund that's going to sponsor that, and so we just want to acknowledge that. That wasn't part of our plan.
Foundation.
Right, and that's happening next year. So
that does seem to be in strategy 4 then. We're talking about
right. It's the foundation and also the CHCW.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
So it's like a big win all around on that strategy.
Yeah.
So that was really the question: is it strategy 4 or is it? It is happening.
And then the collaboration on the jail. You got a question mark there.
Well,
strategy 3.
Part of that is because not that we're necessarily planning on providing that service, but there's collaboration happening between, maybe you know this better than I do, between different partners in the community to try and help the jail come up with a way that might be solved. Because we had to answer no for now. It doesn't work for us, and they didn't accept our proposal, am I right?
Yes, well, we had another proposal that was sort of dependent on residents who had being able to fulfill some spots, and that didn't work out, so we weren't able. We don't have the resources here to do it at this time. So they're looking at a partnership with other medical providers in the community, and so it kind of remains to be seen how that will pan out in the long run.
We're hoping to still participate in a supportive way as far as can we help brainstorm, so.
Okay. And then on the in the grid, there's some, a lot of movement, different time, and some additions there. Are there any questions or specific comments on these changes? Everybody all right? Yeah, Mandy and Rhonda have been thinking a lot about this stuff, so I appreciate that. All right, sounds good to us. All right, now on to financial sustainability. So there are some, you see the additions in red in the grid. So Project to benchmark charges, expenses, productivity, moved to Q2 of 2019. And then alternative payment models, proposed aligned with strategy along the range financial plans, so review and prioritize programs. Fresh long range plan, moving that to Q3, 9 months view of the new program, moving to Q2. So some dates on the long range plan and when to review it. Anything, Scott, that you want to add to or talk about this?
I think that meeting we had some dates to try and get that benchmarking by and that long range financial plan by the first week.
Any questions, thoughts, comments regarding these proposed changes to the deliverables on financial sustainability? Sound good to everybody? Everybody's all right with these?
Sounds good.
Goody. Any last thoughts, questions, comments regarding the strategic plan? Because when we get out of this meeting, it's got to be fresh. Any questions? Any last thoughts? All right. Well, thanks again for all the work you guys have been doing on this stuff. We
Thank you
appreciate
for
it.
reading it and reading our reports, and we do work on them.
Yep.
It was nice to, I'll be happy for a minute too. It was nice to go over those and reflecting back on what we've done the last year. I really feel like we have made a difference, and it feels really meaningful.
I think that when I meet with my group, to me, the advancement is obvious, and I think so. If you're in it in the day-to-day, you just don't see the mileposts passing by. But when the meetups are not super frequent, so we meet every 3 or at the meeting sometimes. But I notice the difference. I notice, wow, look at this. All these the new information that you share with me, and so. The progress is noted.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, now we will go into executive session to discuss real estate under RCW 42.30.110 We'll do a 10-minute recess to 7:50, and then we will have 20 minutes for executive session until 8:10. So we will reconvene into public session at 8:10 unless otherwise announced. Any last thoughts, questions? Okay, hearing none.